Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Lara May, a clinical pharmacist specializing in functional medicine, as well as a certified yoga teacher and Reiki master. I run a truly integrative health coaching practice encompassing functional medicine lab testing, yoga and meditation, and a sprinkling of Reiki energy medicine. Join me here on Light Body Radio to break through your health plateau and come into alignment with your natural vitality. Hello and welcome to Light Body Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Lara May, and today we have with us Elijah Nisenboim. He is the founder of Effigy Breath. Sharing his work with tens of thousands of people for 30 plus years, he has a unique method for guiding people using Effigy Breathwork and sacred Taoist movement to reveal the trauma code that unlocks the map to one's life purpose. He has composed, created, and recorded 18 volumes of music created specifically for Effigy Breathwork and 6 volumes specifically rated to the 6 stages of Effigy Breath, which can be found on all streaming services. He is also the author of 3 books, The Trauma Code, Uncover the Hidden Map of Your Life's True Purpose, A Liberated Life, Effigy Breathwork, and the Process of Freeing Your Mind, and What's in Your Roots, Making the Unconscious Conscious. Those all sound fascinating. Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to have you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So tell us, you've been in the biz for quite a while. So tell us a little bit about your story and what brought you to Effigy Breath and the sacred Taoist movement to unlocking the trauma. That's really what I'm interested in, is speaking about unlocking this trauma aspect.
So you're asking me a little bit about my own journey to Well, I grew up in Canada, and I'm always a seeker in some way since I was a child. Like, there was some part of the world around me that didn't make any sense to me. And music was sort of my gateway drug to higher consciousness, if you will. And I went on to become a musician. I was in my 20s. And at that time, I was playing in this piano bar, and there was this place next door that did massage. And I went there to get body work, and I made friends with the lady, and she and her husband were moving to California. This is in 1990. And she said, put stuff in storage for me and I'll give you body work. And I said, sure. And then she said, well, why don't you try this breath work my husband does? And I thought, well, breath work sounds like work. And I was broke and I was lazy. But I said yes. And the breath work absolutely floored me. It knocked me out. It was so powerful. And when I was a child and I played the piano, I had piano teachers who used to hit my hands with a ruler. So when I did the breath work, I had so much pain in my hands. And after it was over, it really changed my life, changed my creativity, my sense of myself. And I followed my teacher. He had a training in San Francisco. I went there and I was like, wow, I want to move here. My wife was 8 months pregnant at the time, so she wasn't having any of that. And then eventually I moved to the Bay Area, and I left music behind and ended up in a life of service, in a life of doing breath work with people. And after about 10 years and thousands of them, I renamed it Effigy, and trying all the different techniques. And so Effigy is my own brand. And part 2 is that around 1999, I started to study internal martial arts, Tai Chi, with a Chinese man in San Francisco. And eventually he had a camp in China, and I went there and just fell in love with China. I learned the language. I went 21 times. I studied with many masters, and really eventually discovered that it's the roots of martial arts, internal martial arts, is Taoism. It's about your natural alignment and relationship with the universe. It's based on physics, elements, and animals. And so I kind of put these 2 things together. One is I use breathwork to clear trauma. It's just very simple. It's democratic. You don't need to know anything or be smart or be healthy or spiritually evolved. If you just do it, you will connect, you will release things, you'll feel incredible every time. And it's really instantaneous, but it's rigorous and challenging. And then the other thing is just that if someone's going to manifest their life purpose, you have all this habit pattern in the body. You can clear trauma, but that doesn't necessarily mean you know how to live your life correctly, because you have all this false patterning based on trauma. So I use Taoist movements to help with that.
I love that. So, in some of the posts you sent me in preparing for the episode, there's a mention of how trauma and problems are a necessary part of fulfilling our life purpose. Can you expound
Yeah.
on that a little bit? Because I don't think many people actually see it in that way.
Yeah.
And I think it can be pretty powerful to think about it in that way specifically.
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's very, you're just got to the heart of the matter. You know, I call my book The Trauma Code, because it's sort of like trauma are the unresolved events of the past. Everybody has them. It doesn't have to be big things. It doesn't even have to be that somebody intentionally did something bad to you. But if you have everyone has a unique original configuration of who they are, like an acorn that wants to be an oak tree. When you have trauma, that energy of who you are gets locked up, and the trajectory of your life changes, and it's now harder for you to be able to fulfill what you're meant to fulfill. So you live in the adverse effects of trauma. So people think about trauma, about getting rid of it, thinking of it as something bad. But like a movie, you know, you wouldn't watch a movie if there was no conflict or no adversity that somebody was overcoming. Everybody can say that, you know, some of the most difficult things are places that we've given us great wisdom in life, and also made us stronger. So I see that trauma has a value, and it's like compost in the garden. You just have to unlock the energy, and you have to unlock the lesson. That the trauma code is really like, well, you're not a victim. Like, why did your soul choose to come to this life, to have this experience in order to fulfill your life purpose? So the trauma code is really unlocking that, so that you don't live in the adverse effects of repeating the same problems over and over again as a reflection of those original traumas.
I love that. And so the breath work, is that I guess, to maybe simplify it, is that like getting us out of the cycle that the trauma has put us in? Like, or how does that actually, is there a way that we know that besides the fact that we know that it works, but how?
Well, you know, first of all, I'd be happy to, there's a 3-minute, I just did this in the last couple of months. The breathwork practice is over an hour. It's very powerful and potentially dangerous if you don't have a guide. But I have managed to create like a 3-minute video that people can do. It's free, and it's on my website. So if they want to try Effigy and just get the feeling of what it's like, you will immediately feel how intense it is within 3 minutes. So the reason, you know, the one thing you need to live over and above everything is your breath. You need it more than food. You need it more than water. Like it really is God in that sense, because it controls your life. You can't live without your breath. But oxygen is the container for what other traditions would call chi or prana, like the life force. The force of the universe is inside your breathing. If you think about, all of your internal organs are unconscious, meaning you don't have to think about them for them to work. They just work, and you can't manually operate your liver. You can't tell your liver to do something. Even your heart, if you want to slow your heart rate down, you have to go through your breathing. But the lungs are this one mechanism in us that we can be unconscious like an animal and just go on and you'll keep breathing. You don't have to think about it, but you can also choose to breathe. And it's very much like a metaphor for being unconscious like an animal, just, or choosing your life, choosing the life that you want to live. So when you start to do breathing consciously, that's breath work. That's all breath work is. It's just conscious breathing. So the thing is, there are different breathwork practices for different purposes, but you're trying to use this force of the universe in a conscious way, in the same way you're trying to use your life in a conscious way. My particular practice comes from a family of practices that come from India. It's 5,000 years old, which is mouth breathing. It's basically, and I love to talk to medical people about this because it's conscious hyperventilation. So, and my mom was a pharmacist, and when I had a center in San Francisco, it was next to all the hospitals, doctors, people would argue with me about the dangers of hyperventilation. But it's an involuntary reaction to trauma, like when you have a panic attack and you start to hyperventilate. But conscious hyperventilation is to breathe in consciously and to bring in that life force energy. And what happens is it takes you on this journey back to your unconscious, to the place where this trauma is held. And it's a guarantee. If you're willing to breathe into it, you're going to release that trauma, and you will feel extraordinary. You'll feel alive, like you may have forgotten was even possible. So I just yabbered on for a while. Did I answer your
I
question?
love it. Thank you. Well, you also answered another question I was going to ask, which is, what is your definition with your practice with breathwork? Because, I feel like breathwork is sort of like, like a hot topic these days. But I love that you made it very simple. And, like you said, it's just intentionally controlling our breath and our lungs. And that is so true. And the whole thing about, hyperventilation can be dangerous. It's dangerous if you live in that state, a long period of time, like all day long. Yes, we have people that come into our emergency rooms and ICUs for that problem, but that's not what we're doing with breath work. And so the other thing that I really like what you brought forward is combining the intentionality. And so, like you said, all of us have had trauma. We're not victims if we choose not to be. That's, I think, also a state of mind and a choice with our thoughts. Yeah. But that we should be living our life with intention and on purpose, deliberately, instead of just, bumping around and having things happen to us instead of choosing what's happening. Yeah. So how is effigy different than other methods like Wim Hof? I think that's one that people are probably familiar.
I'll answer that, and I just couch it in, like, you said a lot of really interesting things, and I just want to see if I can tie the whole thing together. For one, I feel like 100% of my role in this life, one of my purposes, is I've always felt like this is for the people. Like, I was always a person who was like, I just want my agency and autonomy from a very young time. Like, and we're living in an interesting time where people are struggling to figure out where their agency actually exists in this world. Like, because people have a hard time knowing what to trust, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I do like to simplify as much as possible. And I feel like if I can put this in a language that doesn't exclude people, that's really important to me. And I'll say, over the years, like the yogis have pranayam, and like when I would do a yoga class, they would say, oh, be careful, this is really dangerous and stuff. And I don't think it is. Breath work is just, there's the nose, there's the mouth, there's the left side, there's the right side, there's holding it, there's not holding it. That's it. That's all of breath work. But this particular technique, it's different because it's kind of a garbage collector. It's like, if you breathe like this, it's like going into hyperventilation from a conscious place to bring up the deepest stuck places. And I feel like anybody can do this and get benefit from it. And you asked, just to sort of tie this together, well, couple things. So one is I want to keep it simple. The other is that you don't do this on your own, not at the first. That's a bad idea. But if you want to try any breathwork practices, you should, because you should explore what they're all about. It's not that complicated. It's breath and work. But the thing that I think distinguishes effigy for me between other techniques, because over the years, well, back in the day, there was holotropic and rebirthing and other ones, but now Wim Hof's quite popular. And Wim Hof is a different technique because it uses, ours is so simple. You don't use the mind. It's not a pattern. Like Wim Hof, you'd breathe a certain amount one way and then another way, and it's not as long. Mine is to defeat the mind's ability to have control. So you're just breathing really full the whole time without stopping. It challenges you to do it, but there's nothing to think about. But the main difference between ours and many others is that, like, there's a certain life hack kind of quality to some of them. And like, first of all, I think Wim Hof himself is extraordinary, and what he's created, how he's brought breathwork to the fore is amazing. But it is about sort of mind over matter, or matter over mind. Like you're trying to control something. And I feel like control is a function of trauma. And if you do this practice, it's very vulnerable and very emotional. And all of our ultimate injuries of life are in the heart. They're heartbreaks. They're things that we can't tolerate, like feeling and experiencing. And it's a different kind of a pain. Like, you know, when I first heard about Wim Hof, my friends, people were doing cold plunges because that comes from him. And then one day my father passed away. He and I used to go to where he would play squash, and I would do sauna. So I bought a sauna for my house. And I was like, I'm craving the cold. So I ended up getting a chest freezer and cold plunging. I'm like, this is amazing. But I never got in it feeling like I was under threat or emotional or I was going to die. It was just like, oh yeah, the body hates this and it's really good for me. And can I tolerate it? That's more what a lot of people, the way people use breath work. I see it as you are confronting some of the deepest, most core held patterns that keep your life stuck. And it's really about vulnerability. And this brings me to the last thing, which is why we really value the facilitator, because ultimately, and particularly in this interesting post-pandemic time, like the biggest power we have as humans is our connection with each other. It's not my incredible technique or my skill or anything. It's that the human energy of two people being together with a shared intention. And I've always sort of held that. So when one person lays down to do this kind of work, they're allowing themselves to go somewhere so uncomfortable, and the person holding space gives them that permission and safety to do it. So that's kind of our big difference. Oh, one last thing, plant medicine, because a lot of people talk about plant medicine, but plant medicine isn't you doing the work. It's you taking some external substance that's taking you on a journey. When you're doing breath work, you're the one that's making it happen through your breathing. So that's another difference. Yeah.
And again, it's your choice. You're making the conscious decision to participate. So I think, like you said, it brings in the aspect of agency. So yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think I like the word choice because, like you said, about victims and state of mind, I do think we have choice for how we see our life. And while you can't really change what happened to you in the past, you most definitely have a choice in how you're going to choose to use the material of your life in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, and even our thoughts about what happened, because I'm from a school of thought and a training that sort of teaches that our thoughts create our feelings. And so if we think about it that way, then regardless of the trauma is the circumstance, but what we think about it is going to create how we feel about it that then will create our actions and results from that. And so if we choose to see trauma as something that happened for us in order, like you said, to unlock our life purpose or to show us, what we're capable of in terms of how strong we are, or what amazing, beings forgiveness we can be, or there's a myriad of things that come out of traumatic experiences. As unfortunate as the experience itself is, it really does drive each of our unique paths in life, like what you're curious about, what you're curious about healing. And then, like in your example, in my experience too, what I'm curious about healing, what I usually end up teaching others about as well. So it helps us sort of, like you said, like take care of each other and create a community, because that's what we are as human beings. We're social animals. And it was actually that social aspect of being human that helped our brains develop the way it did. So, which I think is really fascinating. I just started reading The Body Keeps Score. So I think a lot of what you do, what you're teaching, probably related to that whole. And I was actually going to ask you about that. Like, have you had experiences where seeing where people are holding the trauma in their body, and with your effigy breathwork practices, releasing different manifestations of that physically?
Yeah. Well, there's, let me try to be simple about it. There's a complexity to what you're saying. I mean, well, in my system, and it's in my book, but there's a whole part of my book I cut out because it's really for when people are doing my work. But I say I have this system called the 4 levels of the mind, the 4 regions of the self. So I say we exist on 2 planes of existence. The vertical plane is between us and spirit. And I say there's not one mind, there's really 4. I mean, we can definitely say the body mind, right? Because your thoughts as sensation. But I say there are these 4 minds, and that is your internal reality that has nothing to do with time space. It's about your level of awareness and wakefulness. But on 2 of those levels, there's a linear level, which is the mind that we know and love, and what I call the energetic level, which is like feeling, but it's sort of our masculine and feminine, our mind and our heart. And I think that you said, the mind creates feeling, but I could also say it goes the other way around as well. Like, if you have feelings, your mind immediately can jump into interpretation. And at the core of trauma, you have 2 main effects. One is perception and interpretation changes, meaning I now start seeing, well, you're this bad person is going to do something to me. So I start to see things through the lens of trauma. And the other is that I'm averse to experiencing emotion. And so those 2 things are at the beginning is sort of where I focus. But then there is, as you said, well, where does this happen in the body? So, I mean, I've done tens of thousands of breath work with people, and I've done many, probably 15,000 private sessions. So the body is so fascinating. Like if someone has sex abuse, you might think, oh, they have that trauma in their in the reproductive area, but not necessarily. It's very mysterious. But wherever anywhere in the body is somewhere that your consciousness lives. So anywhere in the body, you can have the experience of trauma. And if you think about just, I got to, don't be a pain in the deck, or I can't stomach this, or my Achilles heel, or, the body to me is a metaphor. It's when I say there's 4 levels of ourselves, like we have the most physical, which is our animal level. But as we move up, my 4th level is called the visionary level of the mind. And that's that's the part that's connected to spirit, that has vision and intention, can hold, like, and the animal that I connect this to in Taoist is the tiger, which can, I live next to State Park. There's mountain lions there that are 5 miles away that can keep track of me right now. Like, put
Right.
their intention. The word in Mandarin is yi. It's like you can put your intention. That's so esoteric. But for you to have that connection all the way down to the body is holding. The body definitely keeps score, because the body is where the rubber meets the road. It's where all of everything that you've intended and thought and felt and experienced still exists. So the body never lies. That's the linear mind, liar all the time.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
just where, as a protective mechanism, but still, but the body
Right.
doesn't. The body tells the truth. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing, is when we're in the experience of the trauma, these things are protective for us. They do, it's to keep us alive. But then after the experience is past and we're stuck in fight or flight, or like you said, like we start to see the world through this lens of whether it's distrust or fear or any of those things, then it starts to become a disservice. And even though it's just our mind still trying to protect this, delicate body that we have. So yeah, it's really fascinating.
Well, I think that's why it's so difficult to release trauma, because, and why there's a million things out there to apparently help us with it. I use breathwork because it's fundamental to life, but it's hard to get past the guard at the gate, because the nature of the mind, that level of aware. Well, let me back up. Our society trains us and rewards us for linear thinking. You get your cookie for memorizing information and learning how the system works. You don't get rewarded for creativity, not too much. And so when we have trauma, our first place to go to is to organize it rationally and linearly. But the nature of the mind's job is to protect you from getting in contact with that energy, because it doesn't want you to experience pain. So the game of personal transformation and healing and trauma release is getting past the protection. And so when you do this particular breathwork technique, I'm not saying I have the answer to everything, but just to say, in this particular technique, you hyperventilate and you breathe, you go to an altered state and the mind loses control. And then you'll see, it's like you're getting on a boat and you can just feel yourself going back towards some distant place inside yourself. And then you can let it go. So
Love it. So how does the music that you've created tie into this? So is it to accompany the breathwork exercise itself?
Yeah.
Or, yeah?
It's music, is one of my most favorite things in the world. I was ever since I was a child, and I played music and was a musician. So when I and my initial teacher of the breathwork, he actually was, a fun fact, a DJ on a pirate radio station off the coast of Britain, because the BBC wouldn't play the rock groups at the time. They made a movie about him. He pitched the script and they stole it from him and made a movie called Pirate Radio. But he interviewed the Beatles. Like, he was an interesting dude. And when I finally met him, in the way he used music, we sort of were in cahoots together, and we used our favorite music, because when people were breathing, I'd want to take them to that higher experience. But after many years, I realized that if I'm trying to get people out of memory and into the present, playing things that people knew or liked wasn't necessarily helpful. And I was hearing things, evocative things, that I couldn't find. So I started to create them. And that began this journey of making what I think is sort of my own genre of music, which is, it's not intended to entertain, which most music is. It's not intended to narrate. Like, if you go see a movie and it's very dramatic, ta-da, and then there's like this crash or whatever. But life isn't like like that. It's more of like an underground stream that's just like slowly, slowly changing. So someone like Philip Glass, I used to play his music a lot, music that would draw you in more and resonate with that. So there's 6 stages, and I've created music for all those stages, and I use it to help people to get the most out of whatever part of the journey is. And the stages, the first one's going up because you're going up. Second one's like a establishing of a rhythm. So it's a lot of rhythmic music. And then there's a pushing stage where you're really dealing with stuff, and then a release, and then a kind of a meditation place, and then a celebratory place. That's my fast explanation.
Okay.
It's, yeah,
cool.
it's my favorite part of the subject, but it's not the one that people generally talk about, because if it really works, you almost don't even notice that it's there. So,
And is it required to listen with headphones or anything? Or
I couldn't have
or
imagined
suggested?
in a million years that people would do this online. But when the pandemic came, I'd been traveling nonstop for 20 years. So pandemic kind of saved me in a way, because I could just stay home and everybody arrived in one screen. So people were wearing headphones and things like that. But I feel like it's kind of better if there's more air and space in the room. I'm back to being in person again. I'm traveling a lot. So if I, generally I just play it through a stereo. But when I'm online, it kind of just really depends on, like, we have a class in a couple days, and I'm not going to tell people how to listen to it, but my recommendation is not necessarily on headphones. Also, if I raise my voice, it gets really loud in your head. So yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing. Anything else about the book that you want to bring forward? I feel like we should send people to the book, but you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I'll just say, if somebody's wants more information, like, there's a lot of what I did during the pandemic is be more organized about the process. So you can just get on my website and get on our newsletter. I write almost every day. If you don't want to hear from me, then, it's just education. Then there's the book, and there's a free forum. So there's a lot of real easy ways. You can just click on the contact link. I have a business partner, and she sort of manages the website, but you can reach out to me and ask me anything at any time. And then there's classes and programs, and it kind of goes from there. So, but I would say, the book is 30 years of how it took me only about 2 weeks to write a book that was 400 pages. And it took me a year and a half to make it. It's only 100 pages. And that was the hardest thing. I was like, how can I make this so simple and so direct? So I feel like you can read the whole book in an hour, really. And that was intentional. And it's on Amazon.
I love that.
It's also on Spotify and Audible and all that. There's an audiobook.
Oh, great. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Wonderful. I'm a huge audiobook consumer because I spend so much time traveling, driving. Yes. So awesome. Well, anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to bring forward before we wrap up?
Well, I want to thank you for having me, and I love the way that you formed your questions and your ideas of it. It was a joy to talk with you.
Oh, thank you. Your website, we haven't mentioned what it actually is.
Effigy Breath, EFFIJI, effigybreath.com.
Oh, okay. Beautiful. Simple.
Yeah.
I love it.
If you Google me, I'll come up somehow.
Okay. Wonderful. And so we'll put this in the show notes. Those live at drlaramay.com/podcasts. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you guys want to experience the Effigy Breath, definitely head on over to the website and check out the newsletter and the free 3-minute guided breath work. And I would definitely say this is probably worth its weight in gold. I haven't experienced it myself yet, but I'm very curious. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. And again, make sure you check out his website. And again, if you need the show notes, you know where to find them. and we will catch you on the next episode.